Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Anna Ogier-Bloomer. I'm one of the assistant directors here in career development at SVA. I first want to congratulate all of you seniors who are graduating next week. Good job. So for today's Senior Week event, we are going to start out with a great presentation on Behance online portfolio systems, which most of you should be familiar with by now. If you're not, then you will be after today. Jenn Godbout, Partnership Manager at Behance, will be presenting. Then she'll do a quick Q&A, so if you have any questions after that, you can feel free to ask her. And then we'll move right into our alumni panel. We have some great panelists from the illustration and the photography departments to talk to you about how they've used Behance to find freelance work and how they've just survived in a freelance world. So I'm going to introduce Jenn right now, and we'll get started.
Okay, I'm just going to time myself. So I will make sure to leave a lot of time at the end for questions. So please, if anything comes up that you want to look at together, we can do that. So make sure to hold on to those. First, I'd love to just tell you a little bit about Behance for those of you who aren't familiar with the company and let you know why we've partnered with SVA and sort of who we are and what we're all about. So everything that we do, and we do a lot of different things, is all tied together by this notion that we believe that so many of the world's problems are solved by creative people. And so what we wanted to do was empower creative people to really make their ideas happen. And whether that comes through providing them with more means to get exposure for their work or ways to get organized, that is the underlying mission behind everything that we do. We have an online magazine that you can see at 99u.com. We do a conference. We make paper products. But the thing that I'm here to talk to you about today is really our platform, which is the Behance network that also powers SVA portfolios. So this platform, just to give you a brief overview, was really born out of this notion of self-presentation. So the way that we like to think of it is that in the olden days, creatives really had to rely on face-to-face meetings where you'd have to have, an interview in order to sit with somebody and show your physical portfolio and explain what your role was and how you got from start to finish. And then the internet came along, which changed things up. But still, when people had their own websites, like if you had, your first name, last name.com, a lot of times it was still people who were either being given a business card and that you were meeting at a networking event, or it was like your mom and your friends that were going to the site, and it wasn't that level of exposure that we felt was possible. So that's where the network came into play. And really the main difference here, because I know there are other options and there are other portfolio sites out there, is that Behance provides the largest amount of traffic that one person can get. And I'll go through the steps and what it looks like when you're actually creating a profile and adding a new project. But essentially, the main ease of it is that you can publish your work in one place and have it appear everywhere, whether that's syncing with your Twitter account, your LinkedIn, sharing it through your other networks and to your other contacts. But we just wanted to make things really easy and free and simple and let the work speak for itself. So through our partnership with SVA, we created the portfolio site, portfolios.sva.edu. And I know it's a bit dark in here, but maybe I could just get a show of hands to see who has at least been to the site and looked through it and has an idea of what that site looks like. Okay, great. And how many of you have actually added work? So added at least one project. Okay, well, hopefully that number will go up after today. So this site is open to all students, faculty, and then even after you graduate, it's available to alumni. All three of the panelists who are here today have their work up on Behance, so they're going to be speaking to that and how that's helped them in their careers. And this is something that the career service team is going to be sending out to anyone who's interested in hiring from SVA. It's something that we push out a lot as well to recruiters or hiring managers, and even just other creatives who are looking to collaborate. So it's a really great place to find new connections. So I'm going to go through these things quickly, but really I'd love to hear from you. So at the end, we can look at anything in more detail that you're interested in, and I'll just sort of breathe through them now. So I'll walk you through the steps just so you can get an idea for those of you who haven't gone through this experience of how easy it is to add new work to the site. This is the view you'll see when you're creating your first project, and this is what you'll see when you're adding another project. So you'll just click on the blue Create Project button. In the first step, you're going to select Files. Here you have the ability to batch upload. You can select 15 images if you want to, or you can embed from other sites. So if you're already displaying your work on YouTube or SoundCloud, Vimeo, anything like that, you can grab the embed code and paste it in there. Next up, you'll be prompted to edit the way that your work is displayed. So you can change everything from the font to the order of the photos, the background. You can go into this area and make edits at any time. You can also add in links, more information, less information. This is really up to you, how you'd like to customize it. And then in the second step, you'll be prompted to select a cover, which is sort of a thumbnail for your work. And it's always a great idea to select something that's relevant but also enticing and is going to make people want to click through and see the larger project. You can also enter in a title here. And then in the last step, you're going to select your settings. So you'll choose the creative fields that best represent your work, and you can also enter in any project tags that you want. So this is completely open-ended, and you can enter in things like Adobe CS6 or any of the tools that you've used. And it's really great to provide more information here because these are some of the ways that people might look for work and find new work. We have some recruiters that might come to the site and say, okay, I'm interested in hiring a recent grad who's based in New York. So they'll filter out by location, and then they'll say, and we also want them to have these tools in their portfolio. So that's a way that your work will rise to the surface by entering in those attributes there. I'm going to flip through some top portfolios on the site just to give you an idea of some of the work that's being displayed. This is an amazing fashion photography portfolio, and this is an interface designer. And as I'm flipping through, you'll also be able to see that they've each sort of customized their background, and they all have a different way of choosing their project covers and the way that they're titling their work. So it really should be, a representation of your own style. And out of anything that I'm going to, leave you with, I always like to say this is my most important slide. We look at amazing work online every day, and we really do think of your portfolio in a lot of cases as your chance to make a first impression. A lot of people will discover you or see your work for the very first time in an online setting. So these are the 5 things that we've identified as suggestions. They're not required, but these are our suggestions for making your portfolio successful. So the first thing is to edit yourself and make sure that you only include work that you're truly proud of in your portfolio. Sometimes we'll see people trying to add in just everything they've done to show the abundance of work that they've participated in. But actually, we like to say that your portfolio is only as good as your worst project. So never include anything that you wouldn't be proud to have your name attached to, because once it's online and you're promoting it out there, that's essentially like a calling card for you. Next up is showing relevant work, and what we mean by that is if let's say you've worked for a client and you didn't really enjoy the project, maybe you want to consider not adding that to your portfolio. And the reason why is that you tend to continue getting work or getting incoming calls from people who are similar to the work that you're showing. So they might see that you've worked in one discipline and continue to reach out for projects like that. So show relevant work and the work that you hope to keep creating. Thirdly, when we say respect your work, we mean to spend time editing your text and choose high-quality images. There's nothing more heartbreaking than when you see somebody with an amazing sculpture project, for example, and then they've probably spent months creating, and then when they go to add it to the site, they have a pixelated image, and it's not as clear or as beautiful as it could be. We also encourage you to be descriptive. So many creative projects today are collaborative. So let's say you're adding something like a website to your portfolio. It's a really great idea to explain what your individual role was. Did you illustrate the graphics? Did you code the site? Were you art directing the whole thing? If you don't explain that, it's hard for somebody who doesn't know you personally to figure that out. And then lastly, one thing that you can also do is share your process. So if you want to explain a little bit more as to the way that you work and give someone insight into how you tackled an individual project, you can actually show the rough sketches and the iterations and the mock-ups that led to the final work, and that's something that we've found can be really successful in an online setting. So I'll go through an example of a project. Marina's an SVA alum, and I'll just show you the way that she's laid out a project that's doing really well. And when I say doing really well, it's getting a ton of traffic and exposure, and she's gotten a lot of people who've reached out to her via Behance. So she starts out with explaining what the project is and that this was part of her senior portfolio and that she was doing the rebranding for a bakery shop. And you'll see on the side that she's also added in project tags, that anyone viewing this can share the project, and then it will always have attribution. So anytime if somebody were to tweet this out or post it to Pinterest, it's always going to link back to not only Marina's page where you can get in touch with her, but her full body of work. So that's something that can be really helpful in helping people get in touch with you. So as you scroll through, she shows the different typefaces that she used and the color palette she was working with. And she also includes images of the different ways in which the branding was actually executed, which really brings this brand identity to life. Rather than just showing you, one logo and a business card, she gives it a lot more of a narrative by including these beautiful photos that tell a bit more of a story. And then at the bottom, you'll see that there's a blue Appreciate This button, and the way that works is similar to liking something on Facebook, and it's a way for people to recognize your work and say that they appreciate it and help it rise in the rankings of the search results. Another great thing that you can do on Behance is sell your work. So this is just a simple way to sync your projects or any individual piece within a project up to an online store if you're using one. So this is an example of an illustration project, and within it she has a print that she's identified as for sale. So you'll see there's just a blue Buy This button in the bottom right corner, and when you click through to that, it'll take you to whichever URL you enter. So in this case she happens to be using Society6, but you can enter in anything here, whether you're using Etsy or Shopify or even just your own website. So that's a nice feature to have if you're looking to sell your prints or boost some art sales that way. And we were finding that a lot of people were coming to Behance who were interested in purchasing work, and we were getting a lot of people writing to us saying, I love so-and-so's portfolio, where can I buy their work? So we actually created a gallery that just holds any work that's been marked as for sale that people can browse as sort of a marketplace. And then you can also include your portfolio on LinkedIn. I think a lot of you are probably already on LinkedIn, so this is just a really quick thing that I wanted to highlight, which is that you can actually include a visual display of your portfolio or of specific projects. So you might want to link a couple of school projects underneath your education, or add in a project under each client that you name. But this is a really great way to allow the work to speak for itself. Sometimes when it's just text, it can be hard to explain what exactly you do or what your individual style is. And then before I move on to questions, the last thing that I'll cover is a way that you can also use the site to sort of network online and build a bit of a following. So one of the things that I always recommend is to follow creatives whose work you most admire. So if you're really interested in branding and print design, it's a great idea to look at people's work that you really love and that people that you find inspiring, and follow them to stay up to date on their projects and on the other people that they're networking with. And it works in a really similar way to when you first joined a site like Twitter, or if you're joining Instagram for the first time, you have to sort of follow people first before you can build a bit of a following of your own. When you are following people, you can also add them to your feedback circle. And this is something that we built so that you would be able to publish a project, and sorry, there's so much feedback on this, publish a project and only have it visible to a select number of people or one individual. And that can be really handy if, for example, I worked on something with a colleague and I want to get their input before I share it with the world, before I make it public. And then lastly, I know you're going to hear a little bit about this from your lovely panelists today, but I do want to share a couple of just anecdotes that we hear, because we, via Twitter and email, we hear from people every single day just saying, you know, I got this job from Behance, or this is how it changed my career. And that's really why we're in the business that we're in. And it lets us know that, you know, the platform is working, and that it's also just a real reason why we hope that all of you do spend a bit of time on your portfolios and add your work to the SVA site. Trevor was contacted from Netflix to join their design team, and these are really great examples of a hiring manager going through and finding the work that they're really after, rather than weeding through just people who are getting in touch with them. So on that note, I think there are some microphones floating around, but it's also smaller groups. So if anybody wants to get me to pull up anything specific, we can look at that. Or if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address those.
Oh, I noticed you didn't go over embedding videos, I think, on the Behance profile. Is that possible to do?
Yep, so when I was showing what it looks like to add a new project, when you can add in new images, you can embed from any site, like Vimeo, YouTube, SoundCloud, you name it.
Do you, is there an option for making a collective portfolio? For example, if you're going to start a business with multiple people or something and you want to showcase that work, is that an option as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So whenever you're signing up, we will ask if you're an individual, if you're part of a team. So just off the top of my head, one collective that I love is Sagmeister and Walsh. They're a design studio here in New York, and you can see the way they've set up their profiles a little different. They've selected their logo as their, instead of a profile picture, and they've included more about copy, and they're sort of a duo that creates every project that they do together. There's also a way that if you have an individual portfolio, but on one given project you've collaborated with somebody else, you can name them as a co-owner. And then it'll automatically appear in both of your portfolios, and you can explain in the credits that, you know, I took care of the art direction and he took care of the production, or whatever it may be. I cannot hear you. I heard that, but I can't.
What would be the best way to tie in to some sort of Kickstarter campaign or crowdsource funding campaign to tie your portfolio into it? I mean, or to even access people? Is it mostly like vocational people, people looking for employees, or is it like people just searching for art they like?
Sorry, in terms of the people who come to Behance and are browsing?
Yeah.
So I think that's two questions. So to answer the second one, a lot of people that come to the site are either creatives themselves, and they're interested in finding inspiration and just seeing amazing creative work, maybe to collaborate with the person, or they might be interested in buying individual pieces. And then the other 50% are people that are interested in hiring, whether they're looking to hire interns or fill, freelance projects based on location, or, with people globally. And then we have people that also use our job board that anybody who's on the site can access to hire. These are usually a little bit more of like full-time positions that are all geared towards creatives. In regards to the first part of your question about Kickstarter, that's not something that we see a ton of, but if you're looking to fund a new art project via Kickstarter, you could definitely link to your Behance and show them some of the work that you've already done, or you could show them a work in progress and say, I'm looking for funding to complete this project. Here are my SketchUps and my mock-ups, or my muse, or what I'm hoping to achieve. And that might be one way of using Behance to be sort of the visual display and the backing to that campaign.
Thanks.
Say if you just start a profile on Behance and you're just starting to put your work up, does it allow you to post up your resume as well if people want to see your flat-out resume?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have something called work experience. So let me just actually log in and show you, because I've filled some of mine out. And this is something that sorry, I have this thing where when I type in front of people, I make mistakes. So when you're logged in and you go to visit your own profile, you'll see here that you have the ability to fill out, either an about section, or this could be like an artist statement or your mission statement. Or a bio, and then underneath you have your work experience, and you can choose whether or not you want to make this public. It can be great if you do make it public and you're planning on applying for jobs. It just sort of eliminates one more step. So when you're logged in, you can go to work experience at any time and edit this so that you can change up your personal statement, your experience, your education. You can change the order of these. Add in any awards, languages, just really the basic fundamentals that you would have on a CV. And what's great about that is then if I'm logged in and I go over to the job list, and let's say I was really interested in this design posting for Huge, this company based in Brooklyn, and I wanted to then apply to the job. Oh, sorry, that one's taking me to their own site to apply, but let me just show you another one here. If I was going to apply to a job posted on Behance, it will actually pull from the fields that I've already entered. So right away it knows my first and last name, the email address where I like to be contacted, what I'm looking for, whether that's full-time or freelance work. It'll link right to your Behance portfolio. And then you can either upload your resume in this step, or you can say, just use my work experience. And they can then, print it or download it as a PDF or view it in any way that they want. And this is a system that we've really built based on both the feedback that we were getting from creatives who just wanted a really easy way to apply for freelance positions, because it's not always the same as applying for a job that you're going to work at for years and years. Sometimes it's like they need someone for 2 weeks. I want to just be able to be like, this is my work, take it or leave it. So we made something really, really simple. And then we also took a lot of feedback from the hiring managers and the recruiters. And this was a system that they loved, because then that way they could browse the work easily and see everybody's information in a really clear, easy to read format. So yeah. That was probably a longer answer than you were hoping for, but I got excited.
No, thanks very much.
No problem.
Jenn, what is the best way for?
Oh, hi.
Sorry.
I couldn't. I was like,
sorry. What is the best way for film and video makers to show their work on Behance? In a previous presentation at SVA, you recommended that students or any artists post 3 different projects. And I've heard from students who are finishing their thesis films that that work is their strongest work and the work that they would want to profile on Behance, and in that instance, it would be one piece. So what advice would you give students and artists in that category?
Sure. So just to clarify, when I say a minimum of three projects, I actually mean a minimum of 3 images. I always recommend posting a minimum of either 3 images or 3 videos in a project, and the reason for that is because somebody's not going to spend a ton of time on your project if they only have one thing to look at, so it can give them a little bit more information. I just went over here because I was going to show you an example to speak to your first question about video and film specifically of some of a great project. So here, because, especially with film, it's so collaborative, who is it? I think it's the cinematographer who's added this, has included a description, and he's also included the credits of the different people who worked on the lighting and, the modeling and the art direction, which is a really great way of, giving attribution to the other people, whether or not they're on Behance. And then he's included an embed from the actual Vimeo site where you can play the video right in his project. And you can also then see stills that he's highlighted from the set design and the art direction, which is a really fantastic way of allowing someone, like maybe even if they don't have the ability to watch the video in that moment, that you have someone going through your project and getting a sense of what it is. And then he's showing, some of the ways that they map this out, or, a page of the tutorial that was featured in 3D Artist magazine. And it gives you just so much more context and, more of a narrative, and you have an idea of what it would have been like for them working on this. And for somebody who doesn't know a lot about the genre, like, for me, it gives me much more of an understanding as to the work that went into it. And I appreciate, how much time was spent on this one project. And as I'm scrolling through, I'm logged in, so just ignore some of the things you're seeing on the side that wouldn't normally be there.
Jen, I think we have time for one more question.
Sure.
Hi, I was just wondering, I know that there are ways you can tag a project with open-ended tags, but are there any plans to add more categories, for example, like service design or experience design as a way to categorize your project?
Sure. So for every project, like I'll just click on this one to see, for every project you can specify which creative field it best represents. So and you can add up to 3. So in this case, they've said that their project falls under character design, illustration, as well as painting. And then over here, you can add in any tags that you want. So these are completely open-ended. So you can add, like acrylics, paper, the things that you're using, any of the tools. And then on the actual SVA site, you can add in which major it's related to. So if it was something that you created while you were in school, you can say that this was for my, BFA graphic design program or anything similar.
Oh, she's asking about adding like service design, which isn't an available tag.
Right, so you can enter in anything you want, though, under project tags. So that's where I would enter that in, and then I would enter the creative field that best represents it. But because project tags are completely open, that's where I would recommend it. And the way that we, decide what goes in the drop-down of creative fields is really based on what we're seeing the users of our site doing. So if something isn't there, it unfortunately just means that we probably haven't seen a huge demand for it. There would have to be, a lot of people saying, this is what I really need to label my work as. And if not, then we would say, okay, well, could it be closer to this one or this one? And if so, then you can be even more specific in the project tags. Okay, great. So I'm going to leave it there. If you didn't grab one on the way in, there are some manuals on the table on your way out, and these include a lot of the tips that I talked about in the presentation, and also on the last page, there's a list of resources. So if you're creating your portfolio for the first time, or you get stuck at any point, there's an FAQ. You can also get in touch with us online, and we can help you out or answer any questions. So do make sure that you grab one of these if you don't have one. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thanks so much, Jen. So now I'm going to let our panelists come up very, very carefully, please, and then we'll get started. Angie Wojak, Director of Career Development, is going to be moderating for us.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. As Anna said, I am Angie Wojak, Director of Career Development at SVA. I'm also a graduate of the illustration program here, and I'm very glad to see you all here and that you're all expressing an interest in the Behance Portfolio Network and learning more about freelancing. And I'm just listening to the feedback from I'm letting it subside. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to begin by introducing our panelists, and then they will each be speaking a bit about their freelance practice, and I'll be asking them a few particular questions about their work in promoting their practice online, and we want to allow time for you to ask them questions as well. So I will begin with our first panelist. This is Yuko Shimizu. She is a Japanese illustrator, and she's based in New York City, and she also teaches at SVA. Newsweek Japan has chosen her as one of 100 Japanese people the world respects in 2009. The first children's book that she will be illustrating is coming out soon. It's called Barbed Wire Baseball. It's already out?
Yeah, it just came out.
Okay, so go get it. And it's written by Marissa Moss. And you may have seen her work on Gap t-shirts, Pepsi cans, Visa billboards, Microsoft and Target ads, as well as on book covers for Penguin, Scholastic, DC Comics, and on the pages of the New York Times, Time Magazine, Rolling Stone, and the New Yorker. She graduated with her MFA from SVA in illustration as visual essay, and she has been teaching the next generation of talent at her alma mater. She works at her studio in Midtown and fulfills her passion of world travel by giving lectures and workshops around the world. And she's asked in her bio to please not mix her up with Yuko Shimizu, who is actually the creator of Hello Kitty. So don't confuse her with that person. All right. Our next panelist is Lanola Stone. Lanola is a New York City-based professional photographer, artist, author, and educator. Her commercial clients seek her out to photograph interiors, portraits, and lifestyle, although she's mostly known for her aptitude with children and images of childhood. In 2012, Focal Press published her first book, Photographing Childhood, The Image and the Memory. Additionally, Lanola is, interestingly, a second-class petty officer and public affairs specialist, a photojournalist and media liaison for the U.S. Coastal Guard Reserve. That's correct. And she's also the aunt to 25 and a godparent to 5. So there's a lot of interesting things going on in your life. And then we have Amanda. Amanda Lanzone is a recent graduate, relatively recent, graduate of our illustration program here at SVA. She's an award-winning illustrator who received her bachelor's degree in illustration from SVA in 2011. Amanda has won awards in her field, including the Society of Illustrators Student Competition that she won 2 years in a row, and the Alexander Medal Award at the Metropolitan Museum. Her illustrations have been published in magazines, print and web, greeting cards, book covers, and other projects around the world. She recently became represented by a new up-and-coming illustration agency. And with that, I'm going to begin posing questions to our panelists, and then we're going to open it up to your questions. So what I'd like to do is to start with Yuko.
Yes.
And I wonder if you could just tell the students a little bit about your practice and your clients.
Okay, so I guess I'm the oldest one here. I've been freelancing since 2002, 2003, so it's been about 10 years. Other than I teach either 1 or 2 classes at SVA undergraduate illustration department, which I have been doing since I think also 2003. Like most of my jobs and income comes from actually freelancing. And basically it's freelancing, so like I now have monthly jobs with DC Comics, which I do covers every month for like last 5 years. But other than that, everything, like illustrators, unlike say, graphic design studios, our jobs are usually short term. So sometimes job comes in, I'm done by tomorrow. And sometimes the job come in, then that goes on for a few weeks or a few months, but that's the longest. Usually, most of my jobs are with magazines, newspapers, book covers, so everything starts and ends sometime between 2 weeks and 4 weeks.
Okay, great. All right, then let's move on to our next panelist. I would like to pose that same question to Lanola.
Okay, so the question is, as
I'll
far as
repeat it.
just my daily practice,
Just
basically.
a little bit about your practice.
Okay, so I'm mostly an editorial photographer. That's probably where I've done most of my stuff. About a year ago, I took a year off to write a book, which was very cathartic, about my experience working with children in childhood. And I was approached by Focal Press to go ahead and do that for them. And it's kind of interesting. I graduated. I didn't include any of that information. I went to a really short bio here, but I did graduate from SVA in 2009, and that was after, and I know that Yoko did something very similar, after working in New York since '99. And so my emphasis kind of switched after grad school to definitely making more time for my personal work, which actually got me the book and blah blah blah. So yeah, my jobs don't last that long. They're like a day or two, and just a variety of clients, and mostly around people and lifestyle, and some interiors. So.
And Amanda?
Okay. Since I graduated pretty recently, I guess it's pretty much the same as Yuko, because when you're freelancing and you're an illustrator, it's like people will contact you and then they'll be done with the job, and then if you're lucky, they'll contact you again. So it's basically from a job-to-job basis. So I do a lot of contacting art directors still to try to get things moving, but luckily I've been lucky enough to have people contact me multiple times. So I guess what I try to do now is try to get new clients, and that's basically it.
Speaking of getting new clients, I think the next question I want to ask everyone is if you can talk about how you find clients. And I could ask maybe each of you to speak specifically about whenever you first started your practice, how you began to promote yourself and how you reached out to clients. And of course that will address the online portfolios as well. So Yuko, could you start?
Yes, so I'm the old one again. So when I started, we already had, like, everyone had website, but there were no blogs, there were no social media, like, at least as far as, like, everyone's using, like, today. So basically you have to set up your website, and then you have to print out your, the physical portfolio, which still today, like, it's better you have it, because sometimes client want to call you in and like want to see your portfolio, because most of the media today are still printed media, and they want to see how your images, whether photography or graphic design or illustration, how they look printed. But basically what I did was, now I think it's so much easier, because if you do good work, things spread so much faster, but it wasn't that way when I started. So I had to make a lot of cold calls to possible clients. Is there a portfolio drop-off day? When can I drop off? Like, can I meet you? Like, can I possibly bring my portfolio? And also making tons of cards to send out. Sit in Barnes & Noble, flip through all the magazines and look at the masthead, write down all the info. It was before smartphones, so you're not taking like photos with phones. So I was just writing down, making lists, make like 50 names of the people I want to work with, and then make printout of the new images and put in the clear envelope and send them like every month. And I waited like 6 months and feeling like nobody's ever want to work with me. And then like 6 months into it, I think like people realize I'm pretty persistent and that I'm eager to work, because I created new images every month and made the handwritten envelopes with stamps, send it out. It's not the printed address tag that I bought the addresses, like massive addresses somewhere. And so they knew it. So around 6 months in, people started calling. And what was nice was some people said, I don't have a job for you now, but I've been getting your cards and I like your work, so I want to meet you. And then eventually they gave me work. So, still like, I think things are so much easier and things are so much more online and digitally done now. But at the end of the day, I'm sure everyone agrees, but like, work is basically person-to-person relationship. So like building up the relationship with the person that you want to be working with or you're going to be working with is the key to kind of developing your number of clients who wants to come back to you or who wants to work with you. So that really hasn't changed, I think.
Okay, I also started out when there wasn't a lot of there wasn't any social media, and so when I actually first came to New York in '99, and it was a lot of cold calling and a lot of sitting in sitting in Barnes & Noble, writing down, taking down notes. it is so much easier these days, and but at the same time, I think that can't take place of the tenacity that the old method, had, and the discipline that it taught you. So I kind of have a postgraduate school life and a pre-graduate school life. So my pre-graduate school life, a lot of those jobs came from, I was first in New York, and I worked with other photographers, and I was an assistant, and I looked at the photographers that were doing the work that I thought was really good, because I didn't want to learn from somebody who was crappy, and so it was really great. Like immediately, really quickly, as an assistant, it's like much easier, to start out that way, because I was immediately working on Banana Republic ads and Nordstrom and these bigger clients, and I was able to be exposed to how people who do those jobs, and I think that was a huge learning tool. Again, that was back in the day of film and all this stuff. Around 2005, things switched up a little bit, and I was starting to shoot more digital, and where I was really proficient in my craft when it came to film, and it was very unnerving to me that I was learning this new medium, and so I took a year off to be a creative director at a magazine, which was an amazing experience as far as learning that people don't call you right away doesn't mean that they don't like your work. They stick it, and they stick it on a board, and they wait until there's a project that is right for you. And I think that was my most valuable experience learning. My most valuable learning experience being on the other side is just that there were amazing photographers and illustrators that I hired, and I didn't hire them right away the first time I saw the work. I waited for the right project to come along, and so that, I think, is really great. My post, then I went to graduate school and became actually really proficient. I wanted my work to look the same, that my portfolio didn't look like film and then digital, that there was this huge rift between stylistically. And since then, I have to say, it's kind of been a lot easier. I mean, my book came to me because they saw my work, and that was on my website. And also SVA, I have to give props out to the Alumni Association. Definitely kept track of me, and I had worked down at Art Basel, and that exposure. But all of that was pushed forward, even made more evident because of social media. And so after my book was published, I started my Behance portfolio, and this new emphasis on my personal work is really what my Behance portfolio is all about. I think that that it was said that have the work on there that is the work that you want to get, not generally just the work you've done. And I think that's actually really good advice. And so I think that pretty much answers the question, right? Okay.
Okay. I also do the Barnes & Noble thing. Well, I'll go there and I'll sit there and I'll be in a doctor's office. I'll read the magazines and write down people, the art directors. That's a really good thing to do, I think, still, because it's good to be personal with people. So, if you keep sending them emails, they'll get used to seeing your name, and it's a good thing. But I find that a lot of traffic comes to my site through being featured in places. So the Behance thing is great. If you have a blog, that's also good. Things kind of get around, and there's been a lot of traffic through that kind of thing. If you're featured on any sort of website, always have your stuff linked, and I think that's a really good thing. Other than the Behance, is to just keep putting work anywhere you can. So that's it.
Yeah, and just one other thing is that you mentioned is it's such a small world. The creative field is just such a small world, and I can't tell you the amount of times that I've met somebody and I knew their work because I had looked at that masthead, and I'm like, I knew who I was talking to. That's really important. And so if you just kind of look at the work and you think, oh, this is beautiful, that's beautiful, it doesn't really tell you the backstory. And when you have those opportunities, they can like pass right in front of you without you even knowing. So there is something about knowing who's involved in what project, because that is, I mean, I have definitely gotten jobs by like people being real, creatives are really, they love to know that you know what they're doing. And if you're like, oh, I know you, you're like at House Beautiful and you're doing blah, blah, blah. They're just like, oh, I really like you. And I want, you know, so I think that, you know, another shout out for just doing the legwork.
Yeah, the Barnes and Noble thing definitely
Yeah, do
worked.
it. Just do
totally
it.
works. Because like, you know, like there are, as an editorial illustrator, editorial photographer, there are gazillions of magazines out there who use photography or illustration. But where Amanda fit might not fit me, where I fit might not fit you, you know, like, so to go into Barnes and Noble and I might pick 30 magazines that might be completely different sets of 30 from what she does or what she picks. And that makes it really personal. And, you know, like one of the art directors who called me to ask me to come in, who didn't give me the job right away, and it was one of the first magazines I subscribed to when I first moved to New York. And then I met him years after I graduated, and then we realized like we have the same aesthetics. He's an art director, I'm an illustrator. No wonder why I like your magazine, and no wonder why you thought my work is good. And he works in a completely different field now, but we're still friends. And you know, every time he comes to New York, we meet up or talk on Facebook. So like knowing what people do and see yourself in there or not is very important. And now with the internet, it's so much easy. Like if you have money, you can buy 500, thousands of lists with one click and your credit card. And if you have a lot of money, great. But then out of that 1,000, probably 900 is completely useless for you. But if you go to Barnes and Noble, you do your research, you get 50 to 100 that's completely useful for you, and eliminate everything that's not useful for you in the process. And I think that's always important.
Do any of you use LinkedIn?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I have one, but I'm not that good at it, honestly.
and I have to say that when Behance like started to be able to feature your work there, I was like not all that excited about LinkedIn. It's just like it's a great way to just
Click on everyone and make sure you have the right guy to bother.
Exactly, the right person to bother, or like just that your work, like your history is there and it kind of tells your story. But the moment that you add images to that, it's like, okay, my book's there, and I can say, okay, I published this book, but then to link over to my Behance portfolio that shows the book is, you know, amazing. Or like, these are some projects that I did at school, and like, I can show you what I did at school. So I think that, for creative, I think that's essential, because I don't think LinkedIn is particularly great. I mean, it's not as module as it needs to be for a creative, but that helps quite a bit.
I think LinkedIn's great if you're looking for like a certain position. So if you're an art director, you know, my art director friends like swear by LinkedIn because everyone's connected, and if there is any opening, they will look for people on LinkedIn. But as a freelancer, it's not that so much relevant. Like I do have an account. I go online just to check if anyone tried to add me, and then I just add them back. But that's pretty much the only way I use it. Like, you know, my Behance is connected, so whoever wants to see my LinkedIn will see my images too. But it's more important for freelancers to have like Behance site and maintain that mainly than LinkedIn.
Yeah, for my like freelance, it's like, here's my work, and then it goes straight over to Behance, because there's really not a good platform in LinkedIn to do that.
I wonder if everyone can also speak about the importance of and uses of your own website in tandem with using Behance, because I know you have a great site. If you can speak about that.
Yes, I finally updated my website. I hired someone to professionally do it because my website was so out of date. Then that was like less than a year ago. I used to teach the business course at SVA, which I don't do anymore, but I travel around and do workshops, and I often do like 1 hour quick, business 101 for illustrators. And I always say this, so website is like your monograph. It's like beautiful. It's everything about you and your work, and like feature your work beautifully. So it's your monograph. And then there is like Behance or your blog. That's like sort of like magazine. Like you can curate it in a certain different way. So on my Behance, I don't need 2 websites. So how I use Behance is I curate it in a way I don't do on my website. My website, if the image is one for that magazine, it shows 1 image, and then you have to go to the next. But then, okay, I already have that, so like how do I show my work differently on Behance? And I come up with a theme. So like this winter was long, right, in New York. It's kind of like it wasn't cold, but like it dragged on and on and on. And around the time of spring solstice, I decided, okay, I'll put all the images that I like that is in theme of spring together. And then I came up with a title, something like, like spring always comes regardless of, how long the winter is or something. And there were like 10 images of like flowers or like something related to spring. So, and then I post that onto like Facebook, so like Facebook is like a newspaper, because after a day, no matter how many likes you get, nobody look back, right? So that's like a newspaper. But then like I get, like a lot of comments on the Behance page that all the images has been on my website for years. But they see it in a completely different context. And, everyone, almost all my friends or a lot of my art directors who follow my Facebook page are in New York. And like everyone's thinking this winter's too long. And so it was like right timing to show that. So they're like, oh, these images are great. Like we're hoping the spring will come. So it's perfect timing. And so I get a lot of traffic. So I try to show differently because all the things you have done ever, but people forget or people don't see everything on your website. And then if you have a different platform, so curate it differently so people can see your strengths from a completely different side. So I try to use it that way.
That's great. Anyone else want to add?
I think that I will use it more that way from now on. No. I think
it works.
No, I mean, I definitely tried to like separate, and the reason I laughed when she mentioned website is because I was supposed to have a new website up by today. So John, I know this is recording. It's not done yet, but there has to be a difference like between your Behance site and your website. Your website is what you have done, and I would really, really, really focus your Behance site on like what you'd like to do or something that's inspirational, what has a story, because 2 of my projects on there have been picked up and told the story. Like one day I was just like minding my own business, and the Huffington Post was on the line. They like wanted to know about this project that I'd actually done 2 years ago, and they wrote up this big article, and like BuzzFeed, I guess, has had like over 150,000 hits and blah blah. And I'm like, what? Huh? And that's just because I had a story to tell. And so I think that like having that moment to just take things out, and it's just not one more portfolio piece. They're individual stories, I think is another great way to use Behance.
So I look at Behance a lot, and a lot of people, illustrators, do things like recent editorial work.
Yeah.
Like, that's not an exciting title, right? Like, I don't want to click on it. So like, come up with something fun that like, if you see something like, whatever that is, like you want to click on it. And that's not the recent editorial work, like recent work. And like, yeah, like a little bit more exciting. And I think like those titles are also important, and how you curate is important. And also I have a similar experience. So I have friends who work at Behance. And then with one of them, I was at the conference speaking, and then at that point, I didn't have Behance site, and which was less than a year ago. And then he's like, Yuko, why don't you have a Behance site? And like, whoops, okay. I was actually very, very skeptical because one more thing to maintain,
Exactly.
you know, like we have so many, great thing about social networking is like you can put things fast and you can spread words fast, but then you have one more, two more, three more things to maintain. Then I made the Behance, like, finally, because he asked me to, okay, and then I was being skeptical, and like, okay, then I'll curate, they started doing that. And I have all these, like, I moved here, and one of the reasons I moved here from Japan was because I hated Japan, and I don't get into details because it's not, it's not important, but I started doing a lot of images making fun of Japan, like most of them are like Japanese girl superheroes. They were in different parts of my site, but I decided to put them together. And then, like, okay, it's fun. And then my friends or the Facebook fan page, like, people commented they liked it. I'm like, okay, great. And then, like, 1 or 2 days later, like, it got picked up by a Japanese Microsoft network. And I didn't know, but because I left Japan a long time ago, it's like Google. Like, here people go to Google. There people go to Microsoft. So like my hits skyrocketed, and then like that's like pretty soon after I opened up my Behance site and put that up there. So like it was great to have exposure in Japan, although like I did get some, nice recognition in Japan, but I haven't really worked with Japanese clients because, for them, it's hard to understand my work, but then like it's picked up, so they're like, okay, it's different, but it's fun. So that ended up, I ended up working with a pretty famous Japanese band for their tour brochure covers, and which would not have come if I didn't make the Behance page. So you never know. You can't expect anything. When you do it, you can't say like, oh, I do this and I'll get so many hits. Like you can't plan that. But oftentimes you do what you think is fun, and then people think that's fun, and that will result in something else. So, like curate things in a way you think is fun and see what happens.
Amanda, did you want to add to that?
I guess the only thing I would want to say about that is you never know who's going to be looking for something that you do. I've had many surprise calls, through Behance or through other things that you kind of just don't expect it. So just put out the work that you want to do, and you really don't know who's going to find it. Like, it's pretty crazy when you just get emails from people you weren't even contacting, and they're like, oh my God, you're so awesome, like, you want to do this? And I'm like, okay, great, It's just important to keep doing what you want, and you'll attract the kind of work that you want to get.
I think we have time for some questions. Any questions from the audience? I see one over here. Oh, here comes the mic.
For Yuko specifically, when you were talking about putting the girl superhero, was that, what are the delineations, like projects? They're each on Behance, there's like project sections?
They were completely separate. Some of my personal work, some were done for clients, but I was able to put in under one theme. So I made a Behance page, a section, say like Asian supergirls. And all 10 of them that were done in different time for different clients or different, occasions. Right. But I put them together as a theme, and that got a lot of traffic.
And so then you have other things on your portfolio that are each of a different theme, or is that
your...
Okay.
So like, one's the spring that I talked about, and there are other themes too. And there are more, like some are more straightforward themes, like, recent DC Comics covers, but many of them I decide, like, like people think my work is scary, so they can't hire me for kids books. So I made a section called like, like slightly demented, children's book theme. And then all these kids, but they're a little bit off, like, so I make themes like that.
Great, thanks.
This question is kind of for Lenola, but maybe any of you panelists could talk about this. I was wondering if you guys could just address the issue of personal work versus commercial work, because that's definitely a thing. Like for me personally, I was unsure what to put on my Behance if I was going to make one, which I haven't because I don't know what to put on it yet. And I have like 2 separate websites, which is another thing that I've been like encouraged to do, but I'm still confused about like how to navigate that, and especially maybe in reference to something like Behance, just how to navigate that. Do you need to keep them separate? Is it, I don't know. It's confusing. Please tell me.
I think that it is a very personal decision, like what you're going to put on your Behance or not. I love the idea of curating it, but I do think there are forms for what you do, and I really think, okay, that's fine, that's your website, but Behance is a place, like, for me, what I've chosen is, for the most part, to just only put up projects. And I probably put up things a lot less frequent because of that, and I'm not an illustrator. I can't just sit down and draw, like a production-oriented, hire the models, hire the stylist, pull it all together kind of a thing. But one thing that I learned as far as like when I was at SVA for my graduate work is that so I did a year accelerated type program. So in that year, I promised myself that because I'd always been a commercial shooter, and it's always about the client and what the client wants, and that's really important. But I'd also noticed that a lot of times you do what the client says that they want, and then you do what you know that they want. And the stuff that you know that they want is usually the stuff that's picked up. Now, it doesn't mean it's your best work, whatever, but the personal work is like, that is your best work. That's the stuff that I like to call it kind of my white rabbit, that, it's out there dancing, and when you follow it, like, that work is the work that people respond to, because that work is wholly you. You're being really honest with who you are and what you have to offer. And do my commercial clients get it? Like, not often. There was a San Francisco interior design firm, and she actually called me because of my children's work and said, can you shoot my interiors like this? Those clients, like, never happen. But it did happen that one time, and I was given the freedom to, like, really put what I saw in those interiors, like I do with my children's work. And so I think that, the delineation, don't make Behance, because it is, I'm amazed at, like, how much exposure that some of my stuff do get. Like, seriously, when the Huffington Post called, it was, like, right after the hurricane, and I'm, like, putting stuff together, and, like, I'm, like, what? Like, I was so confused. Like, I guess it got picked up by BuzzFeed, and then it got picked up by something else, and I was getting all these hits in such a short amount of time. You want to, like, put anything on there that you're like, okay, if 100,000 people look at this tomorrow, like, I'm happy about that. Maybe that's not the kid blowing out the birthday candle, although that's, like, great and it pays the jobs. But but I always, like, think of my personal work. I don't have children of my own. I have a lot of nieces and nephews, but I don't have any children of my own. And I think of my personal work as my children, and I work to feed the kids. And so I work, and I do that work that you have to do to pay your rent, to whatever, so you have money to feed the kids. And those kids are what you're so proud of, and that's what you've invested your time and your energy in, and that's the stuff that you want 100,000 people to see in a 20-hour period or whatever. And that, for me, that's the stuff that I put on the Behance. Now, I've, like, totally given up on my website a little bit, so I'm not going to speak on that one. Check back in a month, hopefully. Oh my God, it will be finished then. But yeah, I don't know.
Can I add? So I don't know how different your personal work and commercial work is, but, like, here's a, like, not knowing that, but the generally, there's so many creatives out there, whether your website, Behance, or, like, Facebook or Tumblr, or wherever your work's gonna be, and you have to stand out to get that call. And usually your personal work, it stands out. You get a call to do a little bit more boring commercial work. But then, like she said, it will feed you have income so you can keep doing what you love. And from my experience, eventually more and more people will call because they know your personal work. And there are more people in the future as you go longer and longer and just want to take chances because your personal work is great. But till then, it's always great to get commercial work, right? That's how we all pay our bills. And, not all the commercial works are boring. There are a lot of exciting works. I have to say, most of the works are exciting, right? But, just don't put the works you're not proud of out there, like everybody's saying. But focus on what stands out in all these talented clouds is that your personal work. And then slowly, the more jobs closer to your personal work will start coming in. It takes time, but it will happen because that makes you different from the rest.
Yes. Question right down here. Yes, it's coming. There you go. Oh, okay.
I got a call from people say they're with Russell Brown, saying they want me to do big things. When famous people call you and they want everything for free, what's your feeling on that? I said,
yeah, I have a really strong feeling about that. I mean, you're running a business, and a business is always has to be paid. Now, the form of that payment, it varies. So if you think that working with a really famous person, like whatever, Kate Moss wants me to shoot her children for like $25 an hour, I'm like, sure, I don't care. Access is like a huge thing. And if you have, and that's why editorial work is pays you so much less than advertising, is because ideally you should be getting access to people and places and whatnot. And so if somebody that you feel can help you, want something from you, just make sure that you're being compensated, whether it's financial or not. You need to be compensated. If it's not going to do anything for you and they're just a big name and there's nothing in it for you, creatively or whatnot, turn down that job. You know what I'm saying? You don't have time to do crappy work for free. If it's awesome and inspiring work, you probably do have time to do it for free because you would pay them to help you fulfill a vision. You know what I'm saying? So you always have to be compensated. That form of compensation is very personal and whether or not it's worth it. So I always think of everything as a business transaction, and if you can get win-win situations, all the better or whatever, but don't ever let you be the lose side of it. As a photographer, that happens so often. Oh, this will be great exposure. Oh my gosh, this will be blah, blah, blah. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. I've turned down things that I probably shouldn't have, and I've taken other things that I, that I probably shouldn't have, but you live and you learn, you know what I'm saying? You fool you once, shame on them, fool you twice, shame on you, kind of a thing.
Can I add? So it's a subtlety, so it's a little bit different, but there are companies out there who want you to work for free, and because they say oh, we don't have budget for this, and it's gonna be great exposure. And then I have made some mistakes in past, and for working freelance in 10 years, and I have made a lot of mistakes. So I have one thing I wanna mention. Is that I made a mistake of working for this startup. I'm not going to mention the name. And it was a startup, but affiliated with a bigger company. And they said it's a startup, so they don't have money. And they say you don't have to make anything. You can just provide us the pre-made images. It's just for exposure, and you don't have to do any work. So I was okay. And I did it. And then I realized they learned. What they learned is artists always give out art for free.
Yeah.
And then so a year later, I get a call or email from this random illustrator I don't know. And then hey, I know you worked with this company before and they're asking for my work for free. And then like I was like, oh my God, what did I do? Because, like we sometimes often look at things right in front of you, but then we have to look at things far in the future and look out for things for, say, we've been working freelance for a while. For you guys most of you are probably starting out. And if I make the decision of doing something for free for a company, then they learn everything's free. And then it will make all the art free, at the end. And then it will kill the industry. And then I realized, like, I can never make that mistake again. If people ask me, I have to make sure to tell those people who are starting in freelance, it's not just about you, it's not just about your exposure, but it's about your future and your industry. And artwork is called artwork because it's work, and work is not free.
Yeah,
So.
and I don't know about you or whatever, but a lot of times when you do that work, because like early on, like you do that work for those clients like for free, when they have a budget, they don't call you because you're the free photographer or you're the free illustrator. I mean, so if you think it's going to get you in a door, like that may work if you know the person that you're dealing with, but if they're coming from nowhere, you're the free person. And when they have a budget, they'll get, whatever.
Amanda,
Sally Mann or something.
Did you want to mention anything about having to
I mean, I've done my share of things that were, unpaid or, normally I didn't get much from it. It's better to get something, like, even if it's not money, like, hopefully you're just aware of all the sides of it. Like, I would probably look into it a little bit more before you make your decision. But if you can get something good out of it, like, consider it. If you can't, then it's probably not worth it.
Even if it's like trade stuff, like even if, so you're saying Russell Brown, like Adobe Russell Brown?
Yeah. No, like hip hop.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm not that hip or hot. So, but yeah, I mean, like, make it a two-sided deal. It has to be a win-win. It has to be a win-win. Period. You have to be compensated, and that should be written up. I mean, I know that you asked a question about contracts before. Like, in business school, like, because I got my minor in business, I know you majored in business, like, for our undergrad. Like, in business school, my favorite quote is, like, a contract is only good as the piece of paper it's written on. Like, honestly, whether in an email or whatever, make sure it's an opportunity to communicate, this is what I expect, and this is what you're going to have. And, like, don't be afraid to have those conversations.
Yeah, they weren't giving me any specifics except what they want me to do.
I mean, yeah, well, then ask. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't, of course, like, everybody's self-interested. Like, they're going to all say everything that they want. It's up to you to have enough worth to, like, decide, like, well, this is what I want. Or is this possible? What's possible? I wanted to know so we can make this a win-win situation. I use that a lot of times with my clients. Like, well, how can we, I'm, like, a big fan of, like, don't say no. Like, we want this, and they're asking for the moon. And I'm like, I can get you the moon. It will cost us much to get a space shuttle, and but we can do it. Like, absolutely. And then it kind of puts, like, reality on the situation. Like, I am there for you, and I'm there to get you whatever you want, but this is what it's going to cost. And there's a price to everything. There is a price to everything. And, like, artists, like, honestly, like, we get screwed so often because, there's just this idea that I can sit down and draw, or, like, I just have to push a shutter and I take a picture. Like, and somehow, like, because magically I'm pushing the shutter, like, it turns out because of my over 20 years of experience, and because I know what needs to be there and post-processing or whatnot. Like, there is a craft there is a business, and there's a craft that goes along with that business, and you just need to respect that in yourself, I think.
Like, even with, like, trading, like, you can trade. Like, we both, like, before we started, we were talking about. So I know this amazing web design studio, and he's a friend of mine for years, and I needed a new website. And I asked him how much, honestly, how much, not the friend price, and I couldn't afford it. So, like, okay, what can we work out? Like, okay, so, half of it I'll pay by doing some illustration work for you. Or you can take one of my large drawings to put up on your wall. and then half of it I'll pay. You know, like it's fair. So like trade is fair. Like whatever is fair. But like just because they're celebrity, they can get anything they want. I think they're like just like people just like, you know, spoiling them, like giving them too much stuff. So hey, like, you know, we have to educate them.
Absolutely.
We have time
Educate
for-
them.
Sorry,
Thank you.
one more question, and I see there's somebody down here who's been waiting.
Well, he's been.
And if there's an
waiting too.
individual question, well then
Maybe two, one more?
Okay, two. Yes.
How do you deal with the, I guess this is for all three panelists, how do you all, in your own way, deal with the dry spells when there isn't a lot of work coming in?
Well, I could direct to that because I'm actually in a dry spell right now. But I mean, it's planning. It's like really, it's planning, and it's scary because you know, she mentioned that I'm in the Coast Guard, and like, so for me, you know, I'm turning 38 next week, and I wanted to like make sure that I lived most of my life without health insurance and whatnot, and now I have like health insurance and a pension and all that stuff, and so like you have, you know, those things, and then you have like, you have to know what you need to bring in every month. And then you have to spread it out because it comes in waves. And you can't like think, oh, you know, I've had times when I've had like $70,000 in the bank. I'm like, oh yeah, great. And then like, you know, there's times when I've had like $94 in the bank. You know, it just totally depends. And it really, again, discipline and is really the only way to handle it, and investment properties.
So you would say that it's like basically hope for the best and plan for the worst?
Well, yeah, I mean,
You can't just like hope, right? You have to do something.
Yeah, I mean, you have to plan for like the dry spells, because I mean, I can tell you what months, like, you know, December is pretty much dead, January is pretty much dead, and I know that those are dead. August is pretty much dead for photographers in New York City. Like I know that. So, and again, like assisting or whatever, talking to people, like getting, like find out what the dead months are. Like, I do commercial work, so like, you know, they're dead for
Yeah,
me.
there are dead months because like magazines usually have January, February.
Already
so,
done,
like, you know,
before Christmas.
Yeah, before Christmas, between like Thanksgiving and Christmas, like it's often dead. But like, I think it's a good question. You know, there are things we have to be aware of. Is freelancing artist is an artist, but it's also a small business. So if you know you're really not good at keeping track of your finances, then, you know, take a class or like read a book, you know, whatever you can do to get your finance, like oriented mind going, which is one thing. And also another thing which made me feel better at some point, so I mentioned, is that everyone freaks out. And even people you never think will freak out. So I think in the situation of some of my illustration students sitting here, I get freaked out, you know? And some of your other instructors get freaked out in the slow months, because some months we do great and some months we don't because we're freelancers. And it's just the nature of freelance life, and it will never go away. When an illustrator who I really, really respect, and he's so like, you know, together and always in all these publications, and when his friend said, yeah, even he gets freaked out if he doesn't get a call for a few days. So I'm like, okay, it's not just me, and it's not just you. It just comes with being freelancer, and you kind of have to be ready for it. And then you get freaked out, and then okay, freak out for, you know, like a day, and then like if the call doesn't come in the next day, think of things to do. You know, like, can you go back to Barnes and Noble? Can you update your website?
Exactly.
You know, can you send out new cards? There are a lot of things you can do outside of actually making work or making new work to put on your website. So you just have to balance, because it will never go away. It's part of your life.
Yeah, and there's never a dead time when you're a self-employed person. There's never a dead time. There's times that you're scary and that the money's not coming in, but you can't have like dead time. I mean, you have to like take vacation or whatever and rejuvenate yourself, but you have to always be thinking of that next job and like what you want and follow that white rabbit.
I think there's always something you can do. Like if a couple of days go by and nothing's happening, like just make the new work, start contacting those same art directors, like go back to Barnes & Noble again, like update your Behance, whatever, and just call people you've spoke to already even, or, you know, it's gonna happen. Like it's not the most comfortable thing about being a freelancer, but it's not like forever or anything. Like something will come up.
Great. I think we had a final question we were going to take right here. Yes.
Actually, as I was listening to Yuko and Amanda speak,
Here it comes.
the question I had in my head actually got answered.
Oh, it did.
Yeah, it actually got answered, but thanks very much.
Oh, sure. Well, with that, I just want to thank everyone for coming, and I want to thank our panelists for joining us today. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Anna Ogier-Bloomer. I'm one of the assistant directors here in career development at SVA. I first want to congratulate all of you seniors who are graduating next week. Good job. So for today's Senior Week event, we are going to start out with a great presentation on Behance online portfolio systems, which most of you should be familiar with by now. If you're not, then you will be after today. Jenn Godbout, Partnership Manager at Behance, will be presenting. Then she'll do a quick Q&A, so if you have any questions after that, you can feel free to ask her. And then we'll move right into our alumni panel. We have some great panelists from the illustration and the photography departments to talk to you about how they've used Behance to find freelance work and how they've just survived in a freelance world. So I'm going to introduce Jenn right now, and we'll get started.
Okay, I'm just going to time myself. So I will make sure to leave a lot of time at the end for questions. So please, if anything comes up that you want to look at together, we can do that. So make sure to hold on to those. First, I'd love to just tell you a little bit about Behance for those of you who aren't familiar with the company and let you know why we've partnered with SVA and sort of who we are and what we're all about. So everything that we do, and we do a lot of different things, is all tied together by this notion that we believe that so many of the world's problems are solved by creative people. And so what we wanted to do was empower creative people to really make their ideas happen. And whether that comes through providing them with the ability to batch upload, you can select 15 images if you want to, or you can embed from other sites. So if you're already displaying your work on YouTube or SoundCloud, Vimeo, anything like that, you can grab the embed code and paste it in there. Next up, you'll be prompted to edit the way that your work is displayed. So you can change everything from the font to the order of the photos, the background. You can go into this area and make edits at any time. You can also add in links, more information, less information. This is really up to you, how you'd like to customize it. And then in the second step, you'll be prompted to select a cover, which is sort of a thumbnail for your work. And it's always a great idea to select something that's relevant but also enticing and is going to make people want to click through and see the larger project. You can also enter in a title here. And then in the last step, you're going to select your settings. So you'll choose the creative fields that best represent your work, and you can also enter in any project tags that you want. So this is completely open-ended, and you can enter in things like Adobe CS6 or any of the tools that you've used. And it's really great to provide more information here because these are some of the ways that people might look for work and find new work. We have some recruiters that might come to the site and say, okay, I'm interested in hiring a recent grad who's based in New York. So they'll filter out by location, and then they'll say, and we also want them to have these tools in their portfolio. So that's a way that your work will rise to the surface by entering in those attributes there. I'm going to flip through some top portfolios on the site just to give you an idea of some of the work that's being displayed. This is an amazing fashion photography portfolio, and this is an interface designer. And as I'm flipping through, you'll also be able to see that they've each sort of customized their background, and they all have a different way of choosing their project covers and the way that they're titling their work. So it really should be, a representation of your own style. And out of anything that I'm gonna, leave you with, I always like to say this is my most important slide. We look at amazing work online every day, and we really do think of your portfolio in a lot of cases as your chance to make a first impression. A lot of people will discover you or see your work for the very first time in an online setting. So these are the 5 things that we've identified as suggestions. They're not required, but these are our suggestions for making your portfolio successful. So the first thing is to edit yourself and make sure that you only include work that you're truly proud of in your portfolio. Sometimes we'll see people trying to add in just everything they've done to show the abundance of work that they've participated in. But actually, we like to say that your portfolio is only as good as your worst project. So never include anything that you wouldn't be proud to have your name attached to, because once it's online and you're promoting it out there, that's essentially like a calling card for you. Next up is showing relevant work, and what we mean by that is if let's say you've worked for a client and you didn't really enjoy the project, maybe you want to consider not adding that to your portfolio. And the reason why is that you tend to continue getting work or getting incoming calls from people who are similar to the work that you're showing. So they might see that you've worked in one discipline, or means to get exposure for their work, or ways to get organized. That is the underlying mission behind everything that we do. We have an online magazine that you can see at 99u.com. We do a conference. We make paper products. But the thing that I'm here to talk to you about today is really our platform, which is the Behance network that also powers SVA portfolios. So this platform, just to give you a brief overview, was really born out of this notion of self-presentation. So the way that we like to think of it is that in the olden days, creatives really had to rely on face-to-face meetings where you'd have to have, an interview in order to sit with somebody and show your physical portfolio and explain what your role was and how you got from start to finish. And then the internet came along, which changed things up. But still, when people had their own websites, like if you had, your first name, last name.com, a lot of times it was still people who were either being given a business card and that you were meeting at a networking event, or it was like your mom and your friends that were going to the site, and it wasn't that level of exposure that we felt was possible. So that's where the network came into play. And really the main difference here, because I know there are other options and there are other portfolio sites out there, is that Behance provides the largest amount of traffic that one person can get. And I'll go through the steps and what it looks like when you're actually creating a profile and adding a new project. But essentially, the main ease of it is that you can publish your work in one place and have it appear everywhere, whether that's syncing with your Twitter account, your LinkedIn, sharing it through your other networks and to your other contacts. But we just wanted to make things really easy and free and simple and let the work speak for itself. So through our partnership with SVA, we created the portfolio site, portfolios.sva.edu. And I know it's a bit dark in here, but maybe I could just get a show of hands to see who has at least been to the site and looked through it and has an idea of what that site looks like. Okay, great. And how many of you have actually added work? So added at least one project. Okay, well, hopefully that number will go up after today. So this site is open to all students, faculty, and then even after you graduate, it's available to alumni. All 3 of the panelists who are here today have their work up on Behance, so they're going to be speaking to that and how that's helped them in their careers. And this is something that the career service team is going to be sending out to anyone who's interested in hiring from SVA. It's something that we push out a lot as well to recruiters or hiring managers, and even just other creatives who are looking to collaborate. So it's a really great place to find new connections. So I'm going to go through these things quickly, but really I'd love to hear from you. So at the end, we can look at anything in more detail that you're interested in, and I'll just sort of breathe through them now. So I'll walk you through the steps just so you can get an idea, for those of you who haven't gone through this experience, of how easy it is to add new work to the site. This is the view you'll see when you're creating your first project, and this is what you'll see when you're adding another project. So you'll just click on the blue Create Project button. In the first step, you're going to select Files. Here you have the